My name is Leonardo Brigitte, and something odd has happened. I was haunted by the spirit of a man named Alan Wake. After hearing of this man's identity, I had to know more. How did he contact me? Who was he really? All he said he wanted me to do was complete my Steam library. During the initial incident, the number 0 appeared on my hand, like some sort of ghostly tattoo. Every time I finished a game, the number would increase. It took me 2 weeks to beat them all.
It's been how long?
Every game that I completed also came alive, just like Alan. I was able to find a way to send them all back. A review, starting with Wake.
God damn it. Alan Wake was the first video game made by Remedy Entertainment after Max Payne 2 in 2003. It was announced at E3 2005, but quickly fell through into obscurity. It took a full 5 years for the game to finally come out, and another 2 years for it to get a PC release. Well, it's time to see if what I wrote on this page actually comes true. This is Alan Wake. You are Alan Wake. Duh. Alan Wake is a best-selling writer who has had a terrible case of writer's block. Him and his wife Alice are on vacation in a place called Bright Falls. You get a key to your cabin from a creepy-looking woman and go on your merry little way.
Hey, wait! Mrs. Wake! Your keys!
After a power outage at the cabin, Alice starts to get kidnapped by a weird thing, and Alan attempts to go save her. After jumping into the lake, he wakes up in a car, crashed into a tree with amnesia. He finds a manuscript for a book he is writing that tells the future. It is up to Alan to figure out what is the secret of these shadowy creatures and this dark lake, what happened in that week he can't remember, and to find his wife Alice. This story is absolutely fantastic. It keeps me interested in every twist and turn. I'll be the first to admit that it takes a little time for the story to pick up, never really seeming interesting until Alan finds out that the cabin isn't there.
Way to spoil the plot, dickhead.
Oh, it's the end of the first episode. It's not really a spoiler. The further you get into the who the hell are you?
Who I am is not important. My message to you is...
That's cryptic.
Yes, I tend to do that.
Well, what's the message?
It is about Wake.
Okay. What about Alan Wake?
I will leave now.
That was weird. The further you go into the game, the twists just keep coming. The cast is also really enjoyable. Alan himself is a very fun protagonist, being completely aware of the world around him. The further the game goes, the more detached and sarcastic he becomes.
Deer Fest, huh? Did you hear that, honey?
But out of the entire cast, Barry Wheeler steals the show.
Hey, Al. Lots of hours before dawn. Might as well get some rest. And by rest, I mean drunk.
Come on, Barry, this is... Yeah, what the hell?
The story itself is done in a way that paces itself like an excellent psychological thriller. It is done in an episodic format, which, admittedly, I found weird. This game has absolutely no reason to kind of do this thing. Stuff like Back to the Future and The Walking Dead do this because they don't release the entire thing at once. But at the same time, it adds to the atmosphere. It keeps the suspense going, making me always excited to see what twist the next episode ends with. And toward the end of the game, there were so many twists that I had no idea what the hell was going on. Toward the end, I started checking the Alan Wake wiki just to make sure what I think happened actually happened. The further you go into the game, the weirder the plot gets. The weirder it gets, the more confusing it becomes. The more confusing it becomes, the more unpredictable it becomes. The more unpredictable it becomes, the bigger of a mess it is. And why do I love this game's story so much? I really don't know what it is, because as much of a mess as it starts to become, it's still interesting and I love the shit out of every moment. The game also does an interesting thing with the manuscript pages. Believe it or not, they're actually telling the plot. Like, no joke, every page you find has the potential to be a spoiler. But the way the actual pages are written, you won't actually understand what they mean until you get to that point in the game. And the ones that don't tell you what's going to happen add so much depth to other events and characters that are not really seen in the story. For example, Agent Nightingale. His character is explored and developed so much through the manuscripts. His first major appearance in the game is pretty much his last. But in the manuscript, we find out everything about him. His hunt for Wade, how detached he is about chasing him through Bright Falls, to the point where, when I first see him, I feel he's been alongside me the entire story. When I started the game, one thing that annoyed the ever-living piss out of me was Alan's constant narrations. A lot of the time, they tend to be absolutely redundant.
I had to figure a way out of this. Any second now, and Stucky would be knocking on the door with his axe like Nicholson in The Shining.
But it's weird, because the further I go, the less I care Alan's doing it. But despite being immersive, the ending left a lot to be desired. No spoilers, but to me, it was fitting that the game ended with Space Oddity by David Bowie. Cause, like Major Tom, this ending left me lost in space, and wow, that was a disgusting simile. I can wholeheartedly say that the psychological thriller portion of this psychological action thriller holds up pretty well.
Hey, nobody move. Get your hands off of my client. Who are you?
I haven't played a game that actually made me nervous in a long time, and this game does it on its atmosphere alone. Even during sections that are meant to be normal, the game gives me a great unsettling feeling. The only time I honestly felt safe was the time before reaching the cabin in the lake. The rest of the game manages to make me feel anywhere between unsettled to terrified. The last game to really make me feel that way was Arkham Asylum. But in that game, you are the goddamn Batman. But here, you're just the regular guy. Playing it for the first time, I never expect anything this game's gonna throw, even with the manuscript pages. You know, other than the fact that I'm probably gonna end up in some dark, spooky forest. Almost the entire game will take place in some kind of dark, spooky forest. Does it get repetitive? Entirely. The further you get into the game, the more varied all the environments get. No matter where you go, if it's a night section, you are going to be sucked into the atmosphere. The music helps with that, but it's nothing special. The soundtrack is your basic chilling thriller soundtrack that you find in most games. There are some exceptions. As I said earlier in that disgusting analogy, this game does have some copyrighted songs at the end of each episode. Each one of those songs eerily captures the feeling of the game and the events of that episode.
A candy-colored clown they call the Sandman tiptoes to my room every night, and just to sprinkle stardust and to whisper, go to sleep, everything is alright.
The engine itself also does a great job with the focus on lighting, which is good because if the lighting sucked, this game would crumble to the goddamn ground. It is entirely eerie and really emphasizes this war on light versus darkness by, well, being dark. And this idea of light versus darkness was what drives every design choice in this game. Holy balls, I love it! The game is also entirely off-putting in a fantastic way, and it works so well! The only thing in the entire game that I think is accidentally off-putting is the facial animation, which is Sonic Adventure 1 levels weird. It's like everyone snorted a shit ton of Botox and froze the top half of their face. I mean, look at that! That's supposed to be a look of surprise! I think. As the game continues, it gets better, or I become indifferent to it, I can't tell. Either way, I know by the end of the game I didn't care anymore. I loved everything about this game's atmosphere. It presents itself well, it's off-putting in the best way, it's weird, and it's fantastic. This game takes an awesome spin on a usually conventional gameplay style. It takes the usual third-person shooter control scheme and adds an extra layer to it. The entire combat system is based on the use of lights. Every enemy has a shroud of darkness around it that acts sort of like a shield. Using your flashlight, you lower the darkness shield they have and then start introducing their head cavities into something I like to call bullety goodness. It's honestly amazing how much tension this simple mechanic adds to the third-person shooter formula. This game likes to throw hordes of enemies at you at once, and knowing you have to wear down every individual enemy can make every encounter exciting. And above that, not all of your enemies will be squishy, fleshy people. Some of them are just going to be full-on inanimate objects. The darkness can take over a lot of environmental objects in the game just to throw them at you. And even that, things you just thought were part of the scenery can end up becoming boss battle. And another thing that's amazing is just how this game balances itself. During times where it wants you to be overwhelmed, it will limit ammo drops, batteries, and swarm you with a relentless onslaught of enemies. And sometimes, your only option is to run away. Or it just wants to be an action game. So it gives you a fuckload of ammo and tons of ways to fight off the Taken. And both of these gameplay styles work! I never know what kind of encounter I'm running into. I mean, one minute I'm running through a forest trying to survive, and the next minute I'm on a rock and roll stage murdering everything in sight with fireworks. I will say this game has one major flaw. It's repetitive as balls. A majority of the game will seem like you're either standing your ground in a dark spooky forest, or running away in a dark spooky forest, or running away only to be ambushed in a dark spooky forest. Did I mention how much of this game takes place in a dark spooky forest? Something I also wasn't expecting in this game was driving to be a gameplay element. When you play it, you can tell it wasn't the most important thing they were focusing on. It feels very slippery, but holy shit is it fun. Overall, I absolutely love the way this game feels, plays, and tenses me up. This game has 2 packs of DLC, both of which are story-based. One called The Signal, and the other called The Writer. Now, in order to talk about them, they're spoilers for the main game, so I recommend skipping to this point if you don't want to hear anything about the ending of the main game. Anyway, let's dive in.
Did someone say die?
Shut up.
But I must tell you something important.
Okay, spill the beans.
My name is Thomas Zane.
Uh-huh. And?
I must go again.
God damn it, Zane. The Signal takes place directly after the end of the main game. After saving Alice from the Dark Presence, Alan goes to the diner, but everything seems very off. He gets contacted by Zane, who tells him to go no further. A TV shows a crazy Alan narrating his own death. He manages to escape and find a phone GPS. Sponsored by Verizon! It's up to Alan to follow the signal on the GPS to attempt to escape the dark place. This DLC is done very well. The main game did atmosphere very well, but the DLC takes a very different approach. The entire thing takes place in the dark place, and that leads to a lot of fantastically weird set pieces that can only come out of a fucked up imagination. I love the use of familiar locations with a trippy twist. The atmosphere in this episode is amazing, even better than a lot of parts of the main game. The gameplay itself is also spiced up really well. They introduce the use of words into the environment. When you shine a light on them, whatever the word says gets brought into the world. My only real complaint about the DLC is the story. Like I said earlier, the ending of this game was very confusing as to where Alan was and what exactly happened. This doesn't do much to further the story at all. But what it did do was give me an understanding of where I was in the story. It answered the big question that I had at the end of the game, which was, what the fuck does that mean? The second DLC pack is called The Writer. It takes place right after the Signal and continues Alan's story in the dark place. This has a very similar atmosphere to the Signal, but with an even trippier atmosphere. It also has a lot more throwbacks to the main game, while still feeling entirely original. Personally, I felt that this was much better than The Signal, but at the same time, you can't play one without the other. If you just jumped into the writer, you would have no understanding of what the hell is going on. And with the way The Signal ends, it almost forces you to buy the writer. The ending of the writer also gives me a much better understanding and a lot more closure to Alan's story in this game. It still sets itself up for a possibility of a sequel, while still not feeling like I was rushed to an ending with absolutely nothing like the main game did. Playing both of the DLC packs, they don't really further the story of Alan at all. They answered almost all the questions I had at the end of the main game, but it didn't do much to further Alan himself. But hey, if a new twist on the Alan Wake formula is good enough to make you buy it, fucking buy it, because this was a blast! Both of the DLC packs are $6.99 each. In total, you would spend about $14. If you really have your heart set on this game, I would recommend getting this on Steam. Both the DLC packs are free and included in your purchase. So overall, even though they didn't further the story too much, I had a blast playing them. They were really fun, and I'm glad I played it. What can I say about this game? It's...
And then it finally hit me. I finally discovered the best way to explain my feelings toward this game. It was right there in front of me the entire time. I had no idea how I could have been so blind. I know this needed saying, but I'm not sure how Amy would take it.
It's the best damn Resident Evil game I've ever played. The spooky atmosphere, the tense action, the interesting story, all of this leads to a game that does perfectly what Resident Evil games have failed to do for the past decade. This is a game that actually held my interest and made me want to see the story end. Admittedly, the beginning of the game is a bit slow, but at the end of the first episode, I was hooked. It's been a while since I've seen this game in a GameStop, but honestly, who cares? Steam is the way to go. It's only $30, which is a fair thing, but I bought this game for $3 during a sale! This game on Steam goes super cheap, and next time it's on sale, oh, it is an instant buy!
She went down to the lake, and in the waves she drowned. And now to see your love set free, you will meet the witch's cabin key. Find the lady of the light, gone mad with the night. That's how you reshape destiny.
I didn't expect that to actually work. God damn it, Zane, what is it?
It is about Alan Wake.
Yeah, what about Alan Wake?
His time in the dark place made him a different man. Be wary of his presence.
Took you the entire video to tell me this?
I am cryptic. It is my thing. And now I must depart.
Wait, you can't leave. You're the one who knows what the hell's going on.
This is what is going to happen. Every game is out there. I am just one of those games. You finished Alan Wake and have defeated me. Just know, some of your other games will not be as nice as I. I wish you luck.
Well, this was a weird drug trip. Video games coming alive. You gotta be pretty fucking stupid to believe that shit. Who the hell are you? Oh, fuck me.